Hey y'all, today we're going to be talking about the Dell Latitude 9440. Now, if I were just to reel off specs like its aluminum chassis, micro OLED display, a beefy 10-core CPU, 32 gigs of RAM, a haptic trackpad, you might just think I was describing a high-end MacBook Pro. But no, this is Dell flexing all they've got in a business laptop that is incredibly premium. Now, most of the devices that I've used in the past that are business machines have not even come close to this level of premium high-end experience. So I was incredibly excited to check out the Latitude 9440. But does it actually stand up to my expectations? Let's talk about it. This is InnoIso, and this is the Dell Latitude 9440 review. Now, over time, I've gotten used to business laptops that don't really scream, "look at me." Usually they're thick, they're plastic, or they're carbon fiber, and they're built to just kind of fit into the background. But the Latitude 9440, it's like Dell took a page from the XPS's design book. You know, it's sleek, stylish, and it doubles as a two-in-one. The low-profile keyboard and the soft-touch bottom panel both are nice touches as well. The drawback, however, comes from the fact that they've ditched all of the ports. Well, aside from a headphone jack and three Thunderbolt 4 ports that are on either side of the device, so you can charge on either side of the device, which is awesome. But I do miss a USB-A port, and there's no HDMI port like on the Latitude 7240 that I reviewed last year. They've also traded carbon fiber or magnesium for a full aluminum build. While premium, it does lead for the laptop to be substantially heavier than the 7240 or the 7440, which the review will be coming up soon. Now, a common issue when switching to an ultra-thin modern design, aside from ports, is making for a shallow, bad, uncomfortable keyboard. But the Latitude 9440 brings over the same non-islanded keyboard design of the Dell XPS Plus 13 Plus that we just reviewed, which draws inspiration from laptops from the mid-2000s. It's a different vibe from what you'd expect on a business laptop, with less key travel and feedback, but it's not uncomfortable. Okay, this is a comparison of the keyboard of the Latitude 9440 and the 7240. If you are used to business machines that have more spaced out keys and a lot more travel, then this might not be quite for you. But even I'm used to that sort of experience, I was still very comfortable typing on this keyboard. It helps that the layout is completely standard and predictable. All the keys are in the right place. It's got incredible micro OLED backlighting, which apparently preserves a lot of the battery life, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And it's just generally a very smooth keyboard. Unlike the XPS 13 Plus, it does have a full function row, so that's nice to have. Now, as for the trackpad, it's massive and, while mostly comfy, it does have some quirks. It's a little bit finicky when the device heats up. Sometimes it triggers unexpectedly, or the click doesn't work as expected. And sometimes I accidentally brush my palm against it while I'm typing, which is non-intentional. That just comes from how large it is. But it's cool technology to see on a business laptop that, the technology that you've seen on MacBooks for a little bit, but then also from the Microsoft Surface line and Dell on their XPS line, this haptic feedback trackpad where there's not actually a physical click, but instead just a haptic, click feel that actually is a very consistent and good experience. I do like using this trackpad. It's incredibly smooth and usable. Though I'm not sure whether I like it better than a more traditional clicky trackpad like that on the 7240. Now, remember the display on the XPS 13 Plus that I raved about as one of the most stunning displays that I've ever seen back in December? This one somehow is even better. It wasn't until I referenced the actual specs of this machine that I realized why I loved it so much. The 9440, or this model of the 9440, boasts a 2560 by 1600 micro OLED screen with incredible color accuracy and pixel density. Now, historically, I've preferred matte panels to these glossy panels, but with the anti-glare coating on this and 400 nits of peak brightness, it's usually pretty easy to view in most scenarios, save for my classic scenario of in Visual Studio Code where I'm in a dark mode and I happen to be looking at myself in a mirror, but that just happens for just about every single one of these glossy panels. This display, though, is just incredible for just about anything. If you happen to be a content creator or editing videos, or maybe you're 3D modeling of some sort, or you're doing some sort of photo editing, this will be a great display for it, which is not something you always see on business laptops, and I was very impressed by. Now, usually I'm not the biggest fan of convertible laptops, the 2-in-1s that flip around, because they're often too bulky for me to use as a tablet, but with this device, I've found myself actually more and more flipping it around and using the Dell Active Pen to draw in OneNote. Pen input is incredibly fluid and it's got an imperceptible amount of latency comparable to what I've experienced on an Intel Surface Pro 9. It's nice to have as a feature and it doesn't feel like it took away from the design at all. In terms of software, Dell's thrown in their typical business suite like on the 7240 from last year, which means that there's a number of different features that target business users, including background noise removal on calls, screen dimming when you walk away from the PC, and several more. Now, while this software is very, very cool and potentially very powerful, the Dell Optimizer program itself is a little bit slow and lumbering. I'd get repeated notifications on video calls that my microphone is too quiet. And then when I went to fix them in the software, it'd take me several minutes to even get to the menu to trigger the flag to show up whether the microphone was too quiet. And none of the guests on my calls ended up saying that they couldn't hear me. So it feels like Dell's Optimizer software wasn't really playing nice with Microsoft Teams' automatic audio balancing. And so it felt a little off. Now, one interesting software hardware feature with this device is the webcam, which has an automated privacy shutter. Now, webcams have been all over the place with their solutions over the years of not having you have to stick a sticky note in front of your webcam in order to feel like you're not being spied upon. Lenovo has had physical shutters, so has Dell, I think. HP has had a feature where you could manually cut off all power to the webcam, but then you're questioning whether it actually happened or not. Dell takes a completely different approach with Safe Shutter, where there is a physical shutter underneath the glass, and it snaps open only when you're using the webcam, and then when it's not in use, it snaps closed so you're sure that no one's spying on you. Now, in terms of performance, specs, and battery life, under the hood of this model, we have a 13th gen Core i7 Raptor Lake processor with 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of SSD. It is incredibly capable for just about anything I've thrown at it. Video editing, pretty heavy coding, any sort of office work, 3D modeling, and even just day-to-day work. It's been very, very consistent. And I really have not heard the fan turn on any consistent level of noise. Sure, there is a built-in fan to help it keep cool, but it's never loud, which I've been really impressed by. In terms of battery life, almost perfectly, I've gotten 8 hours of battery life. Just about every single hour I look at how much battery has been spent, and it's about 12.5%, 12.5 to 13%. It's almost like Dell's engineers very, very heavily focused on making sure this stays on or is able to be powered through an entire workday. And that's more than I could say for a lot of business machines. Now, since this is my first 9 series of Dell Latitude laptops, my first top-of-the-line business laptops, it's actually been one of my favorite laptops I've ever used. I am a sucker for good business machines, and this is likely the best that I have ever used. Now, more so than most business laptops, this is something that I actually want to show off and talk to people about. Now, it's not quite perfect. The weight and the bulkiness of the 9440, along with the slightly less comfortable keyboard and trackpad, did slightly take away from my experience, such that when I returned to the 7240, it almost felt like I was coming home. The 9440 might just be the best laptop to convince your employees that, hey, business laptops can be cool too. But for the power users, maybe like me, who just want a great machine with very little compromise, there's other options even within Dell's line, which we'll be talking about the 7440 here very soon. And that's a big toss-up whether you'd go for some high-end something like this with the 9440 or you'd switch for the 7440 or something along the lines. Now, in terms of the whole life cycle of the laptop, Dell does offer 3 years of full warranty support out of the box, which is incredible. I've worked with Dell's support a couple times in the past, and they've all been incredibly helpful on the business side, such that you're never going without a laptop for any lengthened amount of time, which I can have a lot of comfort about. I've really appreciated any of my experience working with Dell. I'd like to thank Dell for sending me the Latitude 9440. None of the comments that I had here today were influenced by that relationship with Dell. While I'm thankful, this is all honest opinions of my experience with the Latitude 9440. And if you have any questions about my experience, I'm happy to answer them down in the comments. And we'll be following up pretty soon here with the Latitude 7440 review. Thank you for watching InnoIso, and I hope to catch you in the next one. See you later.